Praise be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for the battle, my fortress and stronghold. Praise be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for the battle, my fortress and stronghold. Praise be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for the battle, my fortress and stronghold. Praise be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for the battle, my fortress and stronghold. Like a breath our days are fleeting, like a shadow passing by.
All right, we'll see if we can get this going here. Turn off my ringer. All right. All right, well, good evening again. Jonathan Sanford here from the Waters Road Church of Christ as we are getting set for our lesson number 12 of Between the Testaments, study of the intertestamental period. I want to give you just a brief moment, if you've not already done so, to grab the notes from the email that I sent you earlier this afternoon. We'll also be showing the slides on the screen as you see right now. I'm trying to go full screen as much as we can for you. But if you can, go ahead and make sure you have your notes available for our class tonight. And real quickly, trying to share tonight's link on our Waters Road members group. So if you have the opportunity to do that on your side of social media, please help me out with that. It would be greatly appreciated. See, James Spencer. See a few there have joined us off the Facebook link. Many of you are here with us tonight on our YouTube link, and I really appreciate that. I see we are live there on our Facebook side. Get this shared, and then we will get underway. Here, copy link. Awesome. All right. Well, good evening again. And tonight we come to lesson number 12 of our study of the intertestamental period. And tonight our subject is the Herodian rulers from approximately 4 BC to AD 40. Again, 4 BC to AD 40. Last week, we followed Herod the Great. From his rise under Rome to the final years of his reign, marked by political skill, magnificent construction, a lot of very deep insecurity, class, and terrible violence. And tonight we begin where that lesson ended. Herod is dead. The kingdom has no undisputed successor. And here's the thing, class, every heir must wait for Caesar Augustus to decide whether the final will of Herod is actually going to be honored. And I cannot make that point enough. That point is essential, class. Herod had been called king. But the reality is Judea was still a client kingdom beneath Roman supremacy. Herod could write a will. He could go so far as to name heirs and divide property. But the reality is none of his sons could simply go to the throne, place the crown upon their head, and truly be king. It was Augustus who possessed the final authority to confirm, revise, or reject whatever arrangement that Herod may have placed in his will. So the Herodian family could compete for power, and they would. But it was Rome who would decide ultimately who would receive it. Now, what I want to make very clear here is that Herod, in the last days of his life, had altered his plans for succession multiple times during his fatal illness. In an earlier will, Herod Antipas had been named the principal heir of Herod. However, in the final version of his will, Herod Archelaus received the leading place, while Antipas and, of course, Philip were assigned smaller territories. Now, that reversal guaranteed that there's going to be a dispute, because Antipas could simply sit there and argue that his father had previously chosen him, while Archelaus could point to the last testament as the king's final decision. So I think you can see how this is setting up for a very difficult moment for the Herodian leaders. Before we trace the conflict in Rome, I invite you to look carefully with me to the map that's now on your screen, or again, if you have your set of slides from today's email. I want you to look carefully with this. There is the political division that Augustus would eventually approve after the death of Herod the Great. If you notice on the map, the largest and wealthiest portion went to Archelaus. He received Judea, Samaria, and Idumea, including Jerusalem and the heartland of the former kingdom. Antipas received Galilee, Perea, two territories separated from one another, as you notice, by the Jordan Valley. So not the best setup for Herod Antipas with the separation there. Philip received the northeastern districts, including areas known as Baronia, Trachonitis, Aronitis, and Galenitis. Let me say those 5 times really fast. And he also received the region around Paneas. Herod's sister, Salome, also received several cities and estates, but let me make this clear, she was not an equal fourth tetrarch alongside the 3 brothers. With the name tetrarch, of course, you understand why that be the case. The titles on this map also matter. Archelaus did not immediately receive the title of king. Augustus named him ethnarch. That's spelled Ethnarch, ethnarch, a title suggesting, again, we talked about this last week, rule over a people or nation, and promised that he might later be called king if he governed well. Antipas and Philip were called tetrarchs, which equates to rulers of portions of the former kingdom. The word tetrarchs originally referred to the ruler of a fourth part, but by this period class, it could function more generally as the title for a subordinate regional prince. The point is here, none of them possessed, quite frankly, class, none of them possessed the independence that Herod the Great had enjoyed in practice. Their authority existed only because Augustus allowed it. I mean, that's just the honest truth. Karina, you should have had in your notes both the PDF and the PowerPoint. The PDF should pull up there from your email. So let's move on to slide number 4. Before Archelaus ever reached Rome, he gave the people a preview of the kind of ruler he would become. After Herod's funeral, Archelaus went to the temple and spoke to the crowd with promises of moderation. He said, hey, I will not assume the royal title until Augustus confirms me, and he attempts to present himself as the more approachable version than his father. But the people, you got to understand, were carrying years of resentment by this point. They demanded justice for the teachers who had been executed after helping tear down Herod's golden eagle from the temple entrance. We talked about that last Tuesday. They wanted certain officials to be punished, and they demanded changes in the high priesthood. Archelaus would grant one request, but became increasingly angered by the pressure of the people. Now, here's an interesting scenario that occurs. As Passover approaches, as you would imagine, Jerusalem began to fill with worshipers. And when you gather that many people, the unrest begins to grow within the temple courts. And Archelaus sends soldiers to try to bring the situation under control. What happens next is the crowd attacks the first force and kills or wounds many of the soldiers. So Archelaus then sends a larger portion of his army into the city and the temple area. Now, you have to look at Josephus for the rest of the story. Josephus says things became so tumultuous that eventually approximately 3,000 people were killed. And the surviving worshipers abandoned the festival altogether. Now, I want to be accurate with you about what happens here. This was not Archelaus entering the temple himself and murdering a peaceful crowd without any disturbance. No, violence had already broken out long before the killing began. Both sides were being very aggressive. The Jews who were there for the festival were being very aggressive. Then once the first set of soldiers could not bring things under control, then here we find the situation turning very tragic. I would say that Archelaus's response was overwhelming and horrifying. I mean, these are troops under his command. Before Rome had even confirmed his inheritance, class, you already have thousands of Jews near the place where Israel came to worship God. The danger did not end when Archelaus left for Rome. You've got this succession unsettled, unrest spreading through various parts of the former kingdom, and men claimed royal authority. Armed bands attacked Roman and Herodian forces, and the Syrian governor, Publius Quinctilius Varus, again, Publius Quintilius Varus, eventually took it upon himself to march south to restore order. Roman troops would crush the uprisings, and Josephus describes widespread destruction and many, many crucifixions. Augustus was therefore not judging a peaceful inheritance dispute. No, he was trying to stabilize a strategically important kingdom that was already showing many signs of rebellion. Archelaus then eventually ends up traveling to Rome to seek out the approval of Augustus. Antipas also went, insisting that the earlier will be put into or to be honored, right? Other members of the family opposed Archelaus, and a Jewish delegation appeared before Augustus asking that the country, hey, don't hand it to another Herodian ruler at all. Josephus said that a lot of the Jews said, just let us live under the ancestral laws while being administered through Rome rather than having another local king. And I think that really this whole scene just demonstrates how completely Jewish sovereignty had disappeared. You have Jews having to travel all the way to Rome to appear before Augustus just to find an answer as to how things, governmentally speaking, were going to take place in Jerusalem. You have the heirs of Herod. You have the relatives who opposed them. You have the representatives from the nation traveling all the way to this foreign capital so that the Romans could decide the government of Judea. Now, remember, Jerusalem is still the religious center, but Rome was now the political center of Judea. Slide number 5. We'll bring that up here for you. Augustus finally chose, class, to reach a compromise. He followed the basic lines of Herod's final will, but he refused to give Archelaus the crown immediately. As I told you just a few moments ago, the division of the territories, Archelaus, who had received Judea, Samaria, and Idumea as ethnarch, Antipas, who would receive Galilee and Perea as tetrarch, Philip received the northeastern territories as tetrarch, and several predominantly Gentile cities and districts were kept outside the brothers' direct control or connected more prominently with the Roman province of Syria. As I told you, keep this map in mind because it explains the political geography of the Gospels, okay? Bethlehem and Jerusalem, class, they were part of the territories under the oversight of Archelaus. You think about Nazareth, Cana, much of the Sea of Galilee's western shore, and Capernaum were in the Galilee ruled by Antipas. The districts north and east of the Sea of Galilee, including one Caesarea Philippi and Bethsaida, Julius, belonged to Philip. The same family ruled all three regions, don't get me wrong, but the brothers were separate rulers with separate courts, separate capitals, separate policies, and separate relationships with Rome. Now, those borders are, I know they look like lines on a map, but they were not merely lines on a map. They affected travel, taxation, law enforcement, and jurisdiction. Think about it this way with me, class. A person could leave Judea under a Roman prefect, enter Galilee under Antipas, cross the upper Jordan into Philip's territory, and still remain within lands once governed by Herod the Great. Custom stations would stand along important routes. Local officials answered to different rulers. And a political problem in one territory could be handled very differently in another territory just nearby. And this divided administration is one of the big reasons why the Gospels carefully identify the exact location where certain events occurred and which ruler possessed authority there. If you've never studied this before now, you might not know why the Gospels were so specific in telling these location names and the rulers, but here is that reason. Let us begin first tonight with Archelaus, because his rule was the shortest, and because the Gospel of Matthew places him directly within the childhood account of Jesus. Archelaus governed from 4 BC until 86. I will tell you, he possessed the richest portion of his father's kingdom, including Jerusalem, the temple, the royal palaces, the ports of Judea, and the agricultural region surrounding the capital. Now, I'll say this, if he had ruled wisely, if Archelaus had ruled wisely, I think very likely that Augustus would have eventually elevated him from the ethnarch position to being king. Instead, Josephus describes a government that was marked by harshness, instability, and increasing opposition. Archelaus removed and appointed high priest, continued the Herodian practice of treating this sacred office as nothing more than a political instrument, and offended many Jews through his marriage to Glaphyra. Glaphyra was the widow of his half-brother Alexander. The complaint was not merely that the family relationships were confusing. No, the marriage raised serious questions under Jewish law because her earlier husband had left children. The Jews and Samaritans, I think you know, they didn't always agree with one another, but both groups eventually sent accusations against Archelaus to Caesar Augustus. They charged him with cruelty and misgovernment. So after about 10 years, Augustus summoned Archelaus to Rome, removed him from office, confiscated his property, and banished him to Vienne and Gaul in what is now France. So let's look now at slide number 6. Now look at our second map on screen, because the territory that had belonged to Archelaus no longer passed to another son of Herod. This is very important, class. In AD 6, Judea, Samaria, and Idumea were brought under direct Roman administration and attached to the province of Syria. Now, Antipas still ruled Galilee and Perea. Philip still ruled the northeast, but the region that contained Jerusalem was now governed by Roman prefects rather than a Herodian ethnarch. The first of those Roman governors to rule was an individual by the name of Copenius, while Quirinius, the governor of Syria, supervised the registration and assessment of property connected with the new administration. I'll tell you that census provoked resistance from Judas the Galilean and a Pharisee by the name of Sadok, who argued that paying such tribute acknowledged slavery to Rome and compromised Israel's allegiance to God. Josephus connects that movement with what he calls a fourth philosophy among the Jews. A stream of thought that I'll say shared much with the Pharisees, but insisted passionately that God alone should be acknowledged as ruler. I'll say we should not simply equate every later zealot with Judas or imagine like one perfectly organized party from 86 and onward, but the census became a landmark in the growth of the revolutionary opposition to Rome, an opposition that would continue developing until the Jewish War erupted in AD 66. The removal of Archelaus really explains Pontius Pilate and his appearance in the Gospels. If you've ever wondered how Pontius Pilate came on the scene, here it is. Pilate did not replace Herod the Great immediately in 4 BC. We know that. The sequence was Herod the Great, then Archelaus over Judea, and only after Archelaus's removal did these Roman prefects govern the region directly. Pilate, appointed decades later, would stand within that administrative system. Okay, Matthew chapter 2 gives us the most direct New Testament reference to Archelaus. After the death of Herod the Great, the angel told Joseph to return from Egypt because those who sought the child's life were dead. Matthew then says, and I'll quote this, "But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there." Joseph's fear, I think, becomes much easier, class, for us to understand when we know that Archelaus had recently filled the temple area with blood. Remember, we just talked about it. Thousands of people killed in the temple area. Now, if you had heard that from Egypt, you wouldn't be so quick to return as well without there being, a bit of fear. Being warned by God, Joseph would withdraw to Galilee and settle in Nazareth within the territory of Herod Antipas. Some interpreters also hear an echo of Archelaus in Jesus' parable of the minas in Luke chapter 19. Jesus speaks of this nobleman, right, who traveled to a distant country to receive a kingdom, while citizens who hated him sent the delegation saying, "We don't want this man to reign over us." Now, that kinda resembles Archelaus's journey to Rome and the embassy that opposed him. The text does not name Archelaus, so don't go searching for it. So I'm not going to tell you that that is a certain connection, but the text, the historical parallel, so to speak, would have been, I think, at least recognizable to many first century hearers. And it may very well have supplied a familiar imagery for this parable. Archelaus, I think, therefore matters for more than just the reason of a family chart. His violence influenced, I believe, Joseph's decision concerning where to raise Jesus. His removal would then bring direct Roman government to Judea, and that government produced the census associated with Judas the Galilean and eventually placed Pilate in Jerusalem. In only 10 years, class, Archelaus helped shape both the political geography and the revolutionary tension that we see of the New Testament world, especially early in the Gospels. Slide number 7. Now we move to another brother. The brother whose shadow falls across the ministries of both John the Baptist and Jesus. I am speaking about Herod Antipas. If you look at the map, you might notice that his tetrarchy consisted of 2 separated territories. Again, Galilee lays west and north of the Sea of Galilee. Perea lays east of the Jordan River, stretching along that region opposite of Judea. Antipas, class, controlled 2 very important corridors, but he did not control Jerusalem itself. Antipas ruled from 4 BC until AD 39, more than 40 years. Let me make it clear, he was never formally king, although the Gospel of Mark uses the popular title, we talked about this last week, King Herod. Officially, he remained tetrarch beneath Rome. His long reign made him the most durable of all the rulers of this time period, and that would make him the ruler for most of Jesus' earthly life. And, of course, we know that Antipas governed Galilee. That also means, by the way, that Nazareth was Antipas's territory. So were Sepphoris, Cana, Magdala, Tiberias, and Capernaum. I want to correct a fairly common geographical mistake that I've heard over the years. Capernaum was not in Philip's tetrarchy. It stood on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee and remained within Galilee under Antipas. And we know that Jesus did travel frequently into or near Philip's districts, but Jesus' Galilean home base was under Antipas. Now, early in his reign, Antipas rebuilt Sepphoris, a major city only a few miles from Nazareth that had been damaged during the unrest following Herod the Great's death. Later on, around AD 19 or 20, he built a new capital on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee and named it, of course, Tiberias. And if you follow along, of course, I think you know that is in honor of the Emperor Tiberius. The city was designed as a Greco-Roman center with administrative buildings, a palace, and other features that you would normally associate with Hellenistic urban life. Antipas's building program reveals the same political instinct of his father. Naming a city for the emperor would advertise that he was loyal to Rome. Also, building a new capital strengthened the ruler's control and gave him a court that would be dominated by older local families. At the same time, the city's construction created tension, though, because part of the site would be associated with graves. Or think about this from a Jewish standpoint. If you're speaking of ritual purity, which was a concern for any observant Jew, that would have been a very uncomfortable thing to have a construction site closely associated with a graveyard. Josephus said that Antipas used inducements to try to attract settlers. In other words, I'll give you a little payoff if you don't mind putting aside your purity concerns. Antipas also governed Class A region, which the economy depended largely upon farming, fishing, and tolls, along with trade moving around the Sea of Galilee and along the roads connected Syria and Judea. Now, those toll collectors that we read about in the Gospels, the presence of those toll collectors in the Gospel accounts belong naturally within that environment. A city such as Capernaum stood near important trade routes and close to the frontier between Antipas's Galilee and Philip's northeastern districts, making it a sensible location for customs activity. Slide 8. The Gospels also mention a group called the Herodians. Now, their precise organization is uncertain. And I don't want to treat them like we do the religious sects of, say, the Pharisees or the Sadducees. I would say that the title Herodians in the gospel, that name most naturally refers to people who supported the Herodian political order, or maybe they just benefited from it. Mark, if you remember, Mark records that Pharisees and Herodians could cooperate against Jesus, even though usually their interest placed them at opposite points. In that case, opposition to Jesus would create alliances that ordinary politics would not have ordinarily produced. Now, if you've studied Antipas's life, you already know that one of the most important events of Antipas's reign grew out of his marriage to Herodias. Antipas had originally married a daughter of Aretas IV, king of the Nabateans. That marriage created a valuable alliance with a powerful kingdom southeast of Judea, whose capital was Petra, and whose wealth rested heavily upon trade routes. While visiting Rome, Antipas became involved romantically with Herodias, who was already married to another of Herod the Great's son. Modern discussions, when you study this, sometimes call that first husband Herod Philip. But it's a different Herod Philip, not Herod Philip the Tetrarch. Herodias' first husband was a different Herod, a private member of the royal family who never ruled Philip's northeastern territory. So Antipas and Herodias agree to marry, which would require Antipas to divorce the daughter of Aretas and Herodias to leave her living husband. Antipas's first wife would learn of the plan and would escape to her father. That political insult would eventually help produce a war. But the religious issue is going to first come on the scene with the preaching of one John the Baptist. Now, John the Baptist, as I think you well know, did not think that royalty made one exempt from the law of God, right? Mark records that John repeatedly told Herod Antipas, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Luke also adds that John reproved him not only for Herodias, but for all of the evil things that Herod had done. That problem was not a private disagreement between two religious teachers. No, John publicly declared that this ruler's marriage violated God's law. Antipas had John arrested. Josephus locates John's imprisonment and execution at Machaerus, a fortified palace in Perea, east of the Dead Sea. If you look at the map again and notice there, that's why that location makes sense. Machaerus stood within Antipas's eastern territory near the frontier with the Nabatean kingdom. It's both a palace and a defensible prison far from the crowds who gathered around John back near the Jordan. Josephus emphasizes Antipas's political fear. John had great influence over the people, as we well know, and Antipas worried that such influence might produce rebellion. The Gospels really take us inside the household and show us the moral conflict. Herodias, she wanted John dead, while Antipas feared John and recognized that John's making these statements, but John is righteous and holy, and he heard John with perplexity and even interest. But the final decision came during a birthday banquet. Herodias' daughter would dance before Antipas and his guest. And he made a reckless oath, promising her whatever she requested. At her mother's direction, she would go to Antipas and ask for John the Baptist's head. Now, the Bible makes it clear that Antipas was distressed, but because of his oath and his desire not to lose face before the banquet guest, of course, he ordered the execution of John the Baptist. Josephus doesn't give us all the details of the banquet, but he does identify Herodias' daughter as Salome and independently confirms that Antipas killed John. The gospel writers are not describing a random king with the same name. They're describing this tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, the same ruler, by the way, whose marriage destabilized a international alliance and whose court stood only a short distance from much of Jesus' ministry. The death of John the Baptist remained in Antipas's conscience. When reports about Jesus spread, Antipas had different explanations. Some said Jesus was Elijah. Others said he was a prophet like that of old. Antipas concluded, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. The man who had silenced John's voice could not silence the fear that John's message had produced. Slide number 9. Luke later records that certain Pharisees warned Jesus, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." Now, I don't think we can be certain that that warning was sincere, whether Antipas had really issued a direct threat or whether the Pharisees were just trying to pressure Jesus to leave. But we know that Jesus refused to be intimidated, and of course he answered, "Go and tell that fox, behold, I cast out demons and perform cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I finish my course." Calling Antipas a fox did not praise him as clever. In that setting, an expression like that could carry the idea of a destructive, insignificant, or crafty predator. The fact is, Jesus was not going to allow a regional ruler to dictate the schedule of his mission. Antipas, yes, could kill John, but he could not shorten the work God had given Jesus to complete. Antipas finally met Jesus during the trial in Jerusalem. Pilate learned that Jesus was a Galilean, and knowing that, understood he belonged under the jurisdiction of Herod Antipas. Antipas was in Jerusalem probably for Passover, so Pilate sent Jesus to him. Now, Luke says that Antipas was glad because he had wanted to see Jesus and hoped to witness a sign from Jesus. Now, that statement, that detail reveals, I think, a shallowness of his interest. Antipas had heard John, but he would not repent, right? He wouldn't repent of his situation. He hears reports about Jesus, but all he really valued from it was entertainment. Jesus answered none of his questions. So Antipas and his soldiers mocked Jesus, dressed him in splendid clothing, and then returned him to Pilate. Luke, in his gospel, also adds that Antipas and Pilate became friends that day, although they had previously been in some conflict. I would say they were at enmity before that day. The political map explains the procedure. Pilate governed Judea directly for Rome. Antipas governed Galilee as a client tetrarch. Sending a Galilean defendant to Antipas acknowledged his jurisdiction and would also allow Pilate to share responsibility in a dangerous case like this. The final authority to order crucifixion, of course, would have remained with Pontius Pilate. But Antipas became one of the rulers gathered against Jesus, just as the church would later speak about in Acts chapter 4. Antipas's marriage also brought the Nabatean crisis back upon him. He had a father-in-law that was none too happy, Herodias IV, right? Who has now both a family grievance and a border dispute with Antipas. Their forces would eventually meet in battle. Probably, I would say the timeline is around AD 36. And the army of Antipas suffered a devastating defeat. Josephus tells us that many Jews interpreted that disaster as divine punishment for the execution of John the Baptist. Antipas would appeal to Tiberius. The emperor ordered Lucius Vitellius, who was the governor of Syria, to move against Herodias. Vitellius began preparations, but Tiberius ended up dying in AD 37 before the campaign was ever completed. The order ends up not being carried through, and Antipas would never regain the prestige that this military defeat had cost him. The death of Tiberius also would change the balance within the Herodian family. The new emperor, Caligula, favored Herod Agrippa. Herod Agrippa I was the grandson of Herod the Great and the nephew of Antipas. Agrippa had spent much of his life among the imperial family in Rome. Caligula released him from imprisonment, gave him now the territories that had belonged to Philip, and granted him the title of king. Josephus says that Caligula also gave him a gold chain, equal in weight, this is cool, equal in weight to the iron chains that he had worn in prison, which is a very vivid symbol of how rapidly Roman favor could take you from being in captivity to being royalty. That's just amazing thought. Slide number 10. Herodias resented the fact that her brother Agrippa possessed a royal title while Antipas remained only tetrarch. She urged Antipas to travel to Rome to ask Caligula to make him king. Agrippa responded by accusing Antipas of disloyalty and of possessing weapons for rebellion. Caligula accepted the accusations and would remove Herod Antipas in AD 39 and would transfer Galilee and Perea to Agrippa. Antipas was then sent into exile. Caligula offered his wife Herodias the opportunity to retain her property because she was Agrippa's sister, but she chose to accompany her husband. So the ruler who had governed Galilee for more than 4 decades, built cities, executed John the Baptist, questioned Jesus, and survived the reigns of Augustus and Tiberius, he lost everything because he reached for a title that Rome had not given him. Antipas leaves another subtle mark upon the early church. If you read in Acts chapter 13, it names a prophet and teacher in Antioch named or called Manaen, who is described as a lifelong friend, or like this kind of foster brother of Herod the Tetrarch. That means a man raised, I think, in close association with the court of Antipas, would later become a leader in the congregation that sent Barnabas and Saul on their missionary work. So think about that. The gospel reached people from every level of the world that Antipas had governed. Now, class, let's turn to Philip. I can't help but laugh when I say this, that Philip was the least dramatic of the 3 brothers, but he was an important ruler for understanding the geography of Jesus' ministry. Look, if you will, on the map, the northeastern section of the map that I have on the screen at this point. In fact, I'll go back full screen for you. Philip's territory stretched north and east of the Sea of Galilee toward the slopes of Mount Hermon and the rough districts approaching Syria. Luke summarizes his rule as the tetrarchy of Iturea and Trachonitis, while Josephus uses several regional names, including Badonia, Arenatus, Galenitis, Trachonitis, and Paneas. Now, those names can be difficult, but the basic location, class, is clear. Philip governed the lands northeast of Galilee and east of the upper Jordan. Now, the population of the area that he ruled over included Jews, Syrians, and Greeks, and others that had been shaped by years and years of Hellenistic culture. The territory was generally less wealthy and less densely populated than, say, Judea or Galilee, but again, it occupied various important trade routes and frontier districts. Philip would rule from 4 BC to AD 34. Josephus remembers him as a comparatively moderate and accessible ruler. He traveled through his territory with a small group rather than this enormous royal court, and was told, the word is that he carried with him a judgment seat, so that while he was on the roads, he could hear cases as he moved among the people. I'm not telling you that he's a perfect ruler, but the ancient portrait of him, I think, is more favorable than that of Archelaus or Antipas. Philip's reputation for accessibility is especially notable when you compare it to the rest of his family. Josephus says in his account that Philip constantly traveled throughout his territory, heard these legal disputes as he went, and was buried with considerable honor. So his long, relatively quiet reign gave these northeastern districts stability. a stability that never seemed to come under Archelaus in his area. Philip also built and renamed various cities. At Paneas, near one of the principal sources of the Jordan River, and a sanctuary known associated with the god Pan, he enlarged the city and called it Caesarea Philippi to distinguish it from Caesarea Maritima on the Mediterranean coast. He also elevated Bethsaida and called it Julius, of course, in honor of the royal or the imperial family. Both cities, as we know, appear in the Gospels. Jesus traveled into the district of Caesarea Philippi and asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? There, Peter confessed, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." That confession, class, took place near a city that advertised the honor of Caesar and Philip, yet the disciples were being asked to recognize the identity of the true king, the true Messiah. Bethsaida was also associated with Philip, Andrew, or Peter, Andrew, and Philip the apostle. John says those three were from Bethsaida. The city and its surrounding region also appear, by the way, in the accounts of Jesus's miracles and ministry around the Sea of Galilee. I'm not going to tell you tonight that James and John are explicitly identified as natives of Bethsaida, because the New Testament does not say that. But I just wanted to bring that out because sometimes I hear people make that claim. Philip would go on to marry Salome, the daughter of Herodias, the same one that danced, right? Philip would end up marrying her later in his life. Again, this is Herodias, his daughter, although the Gospels don't tell us her name. Philip died without any children in AD 34. His territory was temporarily attached to the province of Syria, with its revenue administered separately, until Caligula granted it to Agrippa I in AD 37. That's going to bring us to our final political transition within our time frame. Herod Agrippa I was the son of Aristobulus, one of the sons Herod the Great had executed, and therefore a grandson of Herod the Great and Mariamne that we talked about. Though Mariamne had also carried Hasmonean ancestry, giving him a family connection that Antipas and Philip certainly did not possess in the same way. Agrippa had been raised within Roman aristocratic circles, and during that timeline developed relationships with members of the imperial family. That education gave him the same political advantage we have repeatedly seen among the Herodians. In other words, he understood how the imperial court functioned and how quickly favor among the Romans could change, and how much a local throne depended upon personal access to Caesar. His life, if you think about it, would include wealth and debt, exile and imprisonment, and then sudden royalty, right? When Caligula became emperor in AD 37, I mentioned this earlier, he released Agrippa and granted him Philip's former tetrarchy along with the additional territory, and of course he was called king. 2 years later, though, after Antipas was deposed, Caligula then added Galilee and Perea to Agrippa's kingdom. If you look here at this final map of today's class, By AD 39 and 40, Agrippa controlled the northeastern territories formerly ruled by Antipas, Judea, Samaria, and Idumea. However, still remained under this area was the influence. Even though he ruled over it, he still had to answer directly to the Roman governors. Agrippa would not receive those regions until Claudius became emperor in AD 41, just beyond the time frame of what we're looking at tonight. And that distinction helps us place the book of Acts. The Herod who kills James and imprisons Peter in Acts chapter 12 is Agrippa I, not Herod the Great and not Antipas. By that later moment, Claudius had reunited most of Herod the Great's former kingdom under Agrippa. Now, Agrippa I, he had a son, Agrippa II, who would later hear Paul's defense in Acts 25 and 26. The New Testament uses similar family names, but again, it's describing different rulers in different generations. As we bring tonight's lesson together, I want you to listen again, class, to the way that Luke introduces the ministry of John the Baptist. He writes, "In the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, and Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip, tetrarch of the region of Iturea and Trachonitis, and Lysanias, tetrarch of Abilene, during the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, the word of God came to John, the son of Zechariah, in the wilderness." Now, that is not just a collection of decorative names. Luke is giving us in those verses the very world that we've just finished studying here tonight. Augustus divided Herod's kingdom. Archelaus failed and was removed. Rome placed governors over Judea. Antipas ruled over Galilee. Philip ruled the northeast. The high priesthood operated beneath that political pressure. Into that divided landscape, the word of God came to John the Baptist. Each ruler helps us, I think, read the New Testament more clearly. Herod the Great belongs to the birth of Jesus. Okay. Archelaus helps explain Jesus' father, Joseph's fear and the establishment of direct Roman government in Judea. Antipas imprisons John, fears Jesus, is called a fox, mocks Christ during his trial. That's all Antipas. Philip gives us the political setting of Caesarea Philippi and Bethsaida. Agrippa I carries the Herodian story into the book of Acts. I should also tell you that we've got to notice the repeated limitation of political power. Augustus could divide kingdoms. Archelaus could kill thousands. Antipas could imprison a prophet. Philip could place his name upon cities. Caligula could remove one ruler and elevate another. But none of them could ever prevent the word of God from advancing. Acts 4 looks back upon the death of Jesus and says that Herod and Pontius Pilate together with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel were gathered against God's holy servant Jesus. And here's the quote: to do whatever your hand and your plan had predestined to take place. That does not excuse their sin or make their cruelty righteous. It declares that human rulers, even when acting from pride and fear and political calculation, cannot overturn the saving purpose of God. Tonight we have reached the political world of the Gospels and the opening chapter of the book of Acts. The land is divided at this moment among Roman governors and Herodian princes. Galilee and Judea no longer share the same immediate ruler. The temple stands beneath Roman supervision. Family alliances, imperial favor, taxation, and fear are what is shaping public life. Yet beneath all of those political arrangements, what's happening? Another kingdom is being announced. Next week, Lord willing, class, we will complete this story. We will complete this study, this series, by examining the religious climate of first century Judea. We'll look more closely next week. This is something you've asked me to do, and we're going to close out with this. We're going to talk about the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, the various revolutionary movements, scribes and priests and synagogues, the temple, and the expectations, most importantly, surrounding the Messiah. Tonight has given us the political map. Next week, we will examine the religious landscape on that map and hopefully for you more clearly see why the preaching of John the Baptist and Jesus produced such powerful yet divided responses. Again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time each week to be with us in this study. One more week remains in between the Testaments, our study of this amazing 400-year period between the end of Malachi and the beginning of Matthew. We know it as the intertestamental period. Good night, everybody. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night for a midweek Bible study. Hope you can be with us tomorrow night. Waters Road Church of Christ, 3616 Waters Road in Pasadena, Texas. Good night, everybody.